Okay, so broadly, this paper considers how participatory intentions are disrupted, changed, made sharper by a socio-digital and futures context. Okay, so I'm approaching this idea at the moment by thinking about the research process as if it were a river. I'd like to write a paper in sections so that they show, as on this scribble, the source, the inlets and tributaries, and the delta, and then the open ocean. Okay, so if I think about the source of the approach that I've taken to the community text study research, and there have been many strands to this, my intention was for all of this to be grounded in and sensitized to participatory action research methods, which, according to Fowles Border, are concerned with the idea of erasing distinctions between researchers and the researched, transforming the process of research into a tool for consciousness and political action. So participatory action research is my source. And it's worth saying too that the other source of the research is a long history of practice which negotiates the relationship between technology, and that's technology in all its forms, pre-digital too, and communities, specifically those negotiations that are found in activist communities. It's important to say that I describe these practices as prefigurative, in other words, that they're examples of the making of desired futures in the present. So, as this flow of research intention and context emerges from the source and forms the flow of the research study about community technology, it's joined by the empirical work and experiences of doing the research. But in this work, the idea of the future is not some future imaginary or some future yet to come, but rather the ideas of how to build generative relationships and sustainable communities of the future. Rather than thinking about a future scenario and finding methods to explore those, the tributaries and inlets that have fed into the main flow of the work have been concerned with processes of making futures. For example, questions like how do we get where we want to go? What are the challenges that we face, and so on. So as a researcher, the challenges here seem multiple. For example, how do I bring into a conversation the idea of the future when the future is always and already so present for those communities that I'm working with? The relationship between the researcher and the researched are dissolved here, not because of the methods that I'm using, but by the very thing that I am researching. Community tech is the making of futures in the present. So I guess that this disruption could be described as a delta, where the intentions from the source and the flow are disrupted and enhanced by tributaries as the river comes towards a large body of water, where the sediment is deposited before the body of the river hits the ocean, or in the case of this metaphor, a body of knowledge. So stretching my metaphor somewhat further, here I'm thinking about the sedimentation as themes that come out of the research with a particular focus on futures. There are themes of despair and frustration, hope and trust that come from the research and are articulated throughout the research in relation to futures. The challenges of building resilient networks of community technology for the future, the decentering of techno-capitalism as a lens through which to think about the relations and negotiations between communities and technology in the present and in the future. So I'm thinking that there's a constructive conversation to be had between the broad action research methods that I began to work with in the community tech study and participatory socio-digital futuring are all challenged and stress tested as approaches when they are considered through the lens of A, socio-digital, and B, futures. These are relations that are perhaps silenced or made tacit in action research methods because they're not on the surface. Perhaps the action research methods can be tweaked somehow to uncover entanglements of the social and the digital, and perhaps participatory socio-digital futures can do that. So the paper could argue that participatory socio-digital futuring is more accurate and generative methodological approach for studies about community technology because it allows into the research context a critical idea of futures and of the relations implicit in socio-digital, which are not foregrounded in participatory action research methods. The contribution, therefore, is that of a development of methodological approaches to socio-digital practices. Just to say that I'm exploring these ideas at the moment, so they might not seem fully coherent at this stage, but it'd be great to talk about them more when I get back. Have a great workshop.